I'm Mark Allard-Will, and I'm the creator of photo illustration, and this is the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Mark Allard-Will about his new Kickstarter project, Photo Illustration. Please like and subscribe to this website by hitting the subscribe button, so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Based in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Mark Allard-Will is a British-born Canadian writer best known for his work on the Canadiana comic series of Saskatch-A-Man, a metafiction graphic novel Årkade, and horror-folklore fusion graphic novel The Burning Black, The Legend of Black Shuck. Canadians residing in the Prairies have seen Mark on regional TV, plus appearances on radio from time to time. Mark is also a featured comic creator guest at a variety of comic book conventions throughout the year. Photo Illustration is a 48-page, perfect-bound book in full color that sees 20 comic book illustrators tackle 20 unique images shot by Mark. The book will begin with an essay that introduces readers to a theme and poses a gallery-style question to ponder throughout the journey through its pages. Does the comic art transform my work, and if so, how? Beyond the photography, comic art, and introductory essay, Photo Illustration will also have its pacing framed by two guest essays, one on the photographic journey, the other on the artistic journey of the comic book illustrator. Mark is promoting the book as a first of its kind to blend comic book illustrative art with photography. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Mark Allard-Will about his new Kickstarter project, Photo Illustration. So, Mark Allard-Will, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Absolutely. This is great. And before I get going to all the questions, I would like to know, what are you reading today?
So I'm currently reading the graphic novel series Home from Mark Michaud. It's a beautiful sci-fi series, really stunning black and white artwork. I really recommend it to anybody who's seeking a really long and nice meted out story from a Canadian creator.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've spoken with Mark in the past. He's been on this podcast before and definitely worthwhile checking out for sure. We recently met up at the Prairie Comics Festival. I wanted to ask you, how was that show for you?
Really good. The sales were good, but it was also just good getting to meet creators from all around Canada. Elaine, my wife, and I have been going to that show since 2023. We were one of the first out-of-province creators go into it, and now we've met creators this year from as far afield as Whitehorse in the Yukon, all across Alberta, BC. So it's really beginning to grow as a show, and it's just really nice. Similar to TCAF in Toronto there, it's just a really nice comic creator-centric show.
Speaking of that, I think it almost is the center of Canada when you think about the geographic sort of expanse that we have in this country. I think it's pretty close to being center, but not bad at all.
Yeah, it really reminds you of how big of a drive it is when you go from Saskatoon to Winnipeg, and that's not even the longest drive you can do.
Right. Very good. Well, while we were there at the Prairie Comics Festival, you gave me a bit of a quick overview of a new Kickstarter project that you have going on that's kind of unusual. So I wanted to talk a wee bit about it. It's called Photo Illustration. What can you say about that?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, photo illustration kind of begins with my background in education in film and TV production. So that's when I first kind of got into cameras. I kind of put those aside for comic book creation after meeting my wife, Elaine. So from 2015 to 2022, I put out 4 graphic novels. But I kind of had a crisis, a mental health crisis, that kind of began in earnest around about late 2022. Fast forward to about August of 2023, I decided to pick up a film camera, and I go back to basics. I retaught myself the exposure triangle because I got to this point where I really wanted to get into the weeds of it and forget all my history with the camera and just pretend it never happened and just reteach myself the basics. Taught myself the exposure triangle, like I say, retaught myself all the composition basics. And I really use this as a way to heal because film photography, you have to be very slow and methodical. You have to do your metering, you have to do your composition, your focusing. And I use it as a way to heal. And at first, I had no inspiration or aspirations, I should say, to do anything with it. Get into 2025 here, and I decide that I really want to do a photo book, but I want to make a photo book with a difference. And what I've done is I've taken a repository of my photography and I've given that to comic book creators and tasked them with recreating select photos in their unique comic book style. So that the theme of the book is going to be transformation. So it's a photo book where we see transformation from the photography to the comic book art. There's going to be essays in the book. So it's going to be this really nice, very different book for me. But it's my way of, while I'm in this photographic journey I'm in, and don't worry, I'm still creating comics, but while I'm in this photographic journey, it's my way of reaching back into comics and doing something with both of them together.
Great. Now, you've hinted about this, but what is it you like most about photography?
I really like the slow pace of film photography, but I really like photography in general. It's the visual art way. Like, look, I'm not really good at illustration or drawing, and it's my way of doing visual arts without being able to draw. It's my way of being able to do a visual art that showcases to the world how I see the world. And that's the beauty of photography. I really like the creative things you can do with it, but I also really love, how hands-on it is.
Right. I think if I could add my 2 cents, that the innovation of the smartphone is sort of taking away the beauty and ambiance and the technical nature of photography, whereas just one button click and away you go. Whereas the camera, as you said, you have to do a lot of things to perfect the image as it appears in the camera. And speaking of that, what kind of camera do you use for your photos?
I've kind of developed this bad habit of collecting cameras. So there's actually quite a few, but I normally stick to the Canon EOS film cameras. So that's the electro-optical system. And so that's when Canon incorporated all these electronic things into film cameras. So the autofocus, the electronic light metering, all of that kind of stuff. So I use the EOS 5. I also use the EOS 55. Then I've got mechanical film cameras that I really love, like the Ricoh KR10X, which is quite a mouthful of a name. But those are the main three that I use. I've got a whole bunch, including some old Soviet cameras and stuff like that, which rarely get used, but do get used. The Soviet ones aren't very good, to be honest with you, but they are an enigma and they're kind of fun to have in the collection.
Great. Now, you mentioned that you're working with a variety of creators on this project. I wonder if you could just highlight a few of them, perhaps, and who's going to be sort of assisting with this Kickstarter project.
Yeah, for sure. There's quite a few. We've got Anthony Woodward out of Regina. We've got Audra Bellion out of Saskatoon here, Don Sparrow out of Saskatoon. There is Mark Michaud, who I mentioned before. There's Jasmine Redford, who I did Siegfried Dragonslayer with, Elaine M. Will. There's going to be, yeah, a lot of different Canadian creators in there. Dominic Bercier will be in there as well. Yeah, just a lot of really great Canadian names.
Now, because this is Kickstarter, typically it's associated with people supporting the project and getting rewards. So I'm wondering what rewards are available for backers of your particular project.
So this one's going to be a little bit different. In previous ones for graphic novels, I've offered PDFs and electronic copies. But generally speaking, readers of art books and photography books, they don't want an electronic copy. They generally want that actual physical coffee table book. So there won't be an electronic copy. There's just going to be physical copies. There's also going to be retailer packs for comic shops, for art shops if they want to sell art books. There's also for bookshops as well. And then there's going to be an endorsement package where you can endorse to get a logo put into the book. And as well as that, there's also tiers where you can get a gallery wrapped canvas to go up on your wall, as well as a book as well.
Very nice. When I've talked to comic book creators in the past, they've indicated to me that they use photos sometimes as references for their projects, whether it be a comic book or graphic novel. So I wanted to ask you, this might be slightly off topic, but are you using this Kickstarter project as a subtle call to action against AI use, which you see quite frequently when it comes to any illustration work?
I mean, that wasn't the overt thing on it, but that has become an overt thing on it. And it definitely was a driver in the background. Obviously, there was the creative inspiration and aspiration to make the book itself, but beneath the surface there, that is definitely one of the drivers. living with a comic book illustrator, my wife, Elaine M. Will. She has used photography of mine in the past as, frameworks for her sketched images. So I'm fully aware of that process and quite intimately. And that is a threat to me as a photographer as well. AI, I mean, is a threat to me as a photographer because anyone can just go on AI now and duplicate one of my photos, or they can go and create their own photos without even picking up a cell phone. They can even be that lazy that even the cell phone we were talking about before, where it's just a one button, take the photo, they can cut that out completely. Working in the photo finishing lab as well, I see that threat daily. People actually print that stuff, believe it or not. That is a real risk. And so there is definitely a side to this of reminding people that the real human creative process is so much more rewarding than just typing in a prompt in a computer, because eventually that's going to become numbing and dull, and it takes away your experiences of being a human living on this earth.
Right. Now, with everything you have on the go with this particular project, do you have any other comic book projects on the go that you can talk about?
Yeah, so I'm currently working with Dino Pai, a Chinese-Canadian illustrator out of Vancouver, on a book that I have a working title on. It's not properly titled, so we'll have to circle back to that, unfortunately. It is a historical Canadian graphic novel that focuses on Operation Oblivion, where 13 Chinese-Canadian men, against the backdrop of both the Chinese segregation in BC and the Chinese Exclusion Act that was running very much during World War II as well, they were chosen to be commandos and dropped behind Japanese lines in the South Pacific. Their heroism in the latter days of the war led to the Chinese Exclusion Act ending. It led to a more inclusive Canada, and it led to a Canada where we saw the first Chinese-Canadian MP, which was one of the 13 Chinese-Canadian men, Douglas Jung. And it also led to Chinese Canadians becoming a very intricate part of the tapestry that we call Canada today.
Well, with everything that you have on the go today and in the future, where can people find out more information about you and your Kickstarter?
So for me personally, people can visit markallardwill.com. The hyphen is dropped in that. It's all just one continuous word, markallardwill.com. And for the Kickstarter, just head on over to Kickstarter and in the search, put in photo-illustration, all one word, and you'll be able to find the Kickstarter because it's the only one with that name.
Very good. Well, Mark, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
Just one thing, which is I discussed that, I used my photography journey as a way to heal from mental health. And I noticed that the conversation about mental health, that we've had a healthy one during the 2010s, is beginning to recede here in the 2020s. It's going back into the shadows. And I really just want to remind people that if you're suffering, please don't suffer in silence. Reach out to friends, reach out to therapists, reach out to anyone that can help you, because you are very much worth the help.
Thanks to Mark for the chat. You can discover more about Mark online at markallardwill.com and on Instagram at Cuckoo's Nest Press. You can learn more about Photo Illustration Project on Kickstarter. And thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to even more conversations from creators about making comic books and graphic novels. I also encourage you to subscribe via the website so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media sites. And you're encouraged to send any and all feedback to John at truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for tuning in, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2025.